Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Reynolds Restoration and Disaster Planning Lunch and Learn. Really wish, Ren, that we could be in person, but given the state of the current pandemic, virtual is the best, Ren, that we can do. And we really hope, Ren, that you gain a lot from this seminar. And we have a lot of relevant information, especially given some of the disasters that are happening, whether it be a blizzard or anything right now in our country. My name is Anthony Worrell, President of Reynolds Restoration, and a couple of housekeeping items here before we get started. If you have any questions as we go through the seminar, please use the Q&A function and just ask those as you have those questions, and our moderators may answer those as they come up, or they may wait to the end so the entire group can benefit from those questions and answers. And speaking of our moderators, also on the call or on the Lunch and Learn, I have the rest of our commercial restoration team: Greg Bensel, Ryan McGuff, and Bob Strickland. All work out of our 3 offices, one in Philadelphia, one in Baltimore, Maryland, and one in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. A very shocking statistic, and that we find that I've really found over the years is 40% of businesses that incur a disaster do not reopen after that. And another 25% of those businesses that do reopen also do not make it to that second year. The best way that you can to reduce the impact on your business is to have a detailed plan in place so you know what to do to help reduce any impact that you have. So we're going to go over the steps that we've found and the questions that we've found really beneficial with our 15 years of experience doing commercial restoration. Some of the disasters and emergencies that may look a little familiar to you. So we have a large fire, or we have a flood event, or we have a large amount of mold that may happen to some of your buildings, or you could have a pipe break or a sprinkler line break from inside of your building. All of these are very common that do happen. Another one that is something that is new to us over the last year is having a pandemic, and really our businesses prepared for that. We've really seen that may be something that you want to have inside of your disaster plan. You may have some vacant buildings, partially occupied buildings, people working from home. Something that we found that 12 months ago or more, we would have not really thought to put in a disaster plan. Some of the important questions that we really find helpful when thinking about starting a plan. Have you put together a disaster plan in the past? Do you have it? Do you know where it is? Have you ever had a loss at your buildings? What are some of the lessons that you've learned if you had one of the kind of losses or disasters happen to your buildings and or group of buildings? All very important things to know and document before we put together a plan. Who is responsible for your emergency plan? Is it a person, or is it a group of people or department? And then based on your specific business, on your specific operation, what are the most important parts to continuing that operation? Those are the things that we need to really document and work on getting back up and running as soon as possible. So based on those questions, here are some of the steps that we've really found beneficial to go through a disaster plan. And we're going to go into detail with all 4 of these steps, but a vulnerability assessment, a detailed list of emergency personnel and actions that each of those emergency personnel would put into place if there is said emergency. Data mining all of your facilities. We'll get into a lot of detail on exactly what that means. And then once you have all 3 of those put together, formalizing that into one readily accessible and remotely accessible plan. Vulnerability assessment. So you want to look at the different threats that could happen. So a flood, a tropical storm, a blizzard, a snowstorm, things that are happening right now, a deep freeze, and then some of the consequences of that, a fire, sprinkler break, loss of power. What are you going to do? Are your buildings or your properties, are they vulnerable to any of those or all of them? And what are some of the steps that you could take to reduce the amount of time and the vulnerability there? That's what you really want to detail on the vulnerability event assessment. Emergency personnel. So really important, who has the authority to basically enact that there is an emergency and move to the next step. So contacting other people inside of your company and or business. Who has the authority to do that? And then who would need communicated with internally? Also, externally. Who is going to communicate with your tenants and or people that may use the building? Also, really importantly, especially in today's world, who is going to communicate with the media and or who is going to deliver a social media message? We really think it's important and that is a singular person and remains consistent. So the message stays very consistent with what you want out there. Data mining. What is data mining? You are going through and you are detailing individual buildings. So all of your buildings, whether it's floor plans, evacuation routes, shutoffs for whether it is water, whether it is a gas main, whether it is some sort of electrical shutoff, very specific areas. And how can you quickly get to those and get those shut off? Because usually an emergency happens at a non-convenient time, middle of the night. So if somebody can readily access that and get to that, it's going to reduce all of the downtime that you have. With your data mining, you want to collect site-specific data. So inside of your disaster plan, it is not just a broad plan, but there is also very specific data for each of your buildings. So inside of there, you would want to look at things like a staging area, water protocols. So where are all the shutoffs? How many different types of do you have coming into the building? Different equipment protocols. Emergency arrival procedures. Where do you want an emergency team and someone showing up? You want them showing up at the front door or to a back loading dock? Building vendors. Building vendors are an important one. If we're coming into a high rise and there's been a water loss and or some sort of fire and the elevator isn't working, we need to know who is that elevator vendor, and we need to get them out on site as soon as possible to hopefully get that elevator back and working. So we can get up to the area and you can start to reduce the risk that you have for any sort of event. Once you've looked at all three of those areas and you've documented all three of those areas, putting that into a formalized, documented, remotely accessible plan is really important. We found that people have parts of this plan, but different people inside the company have different parts of the plan. And one, it's either not remotely accessible or it is in a hard copy and hasn't been updated in a long time. That is why we have gone through the different steps to really bring it all together, bring all the stakeholders together inside of the company and put together the plan and make it remotely accessible, which means you can also update it regularly. So what have we done so far here? We've put together the pre-planning. We've gone through the vulnerability assessment. We've looked at the emergency contact information and who's responsible for those emergency contacts. We're gathering data. We're documenting that response plan. All of that moves right into, and hope you don't have to ever implement the disaster plan for an emergency. But if you do, you'll be ready. You can activate your plan. You get to inform your response team. You want to follow the protocol that you set up. And then you want to enact that for that specific building. You want to dispatch crews, the right crews with the right amount of equipment. You're looking to reduce the downtime and the interruption right to that business. We know that that is a large lift. We just asked a lot of information, and you guys are busy running your businesses. So how do you put that together? And we've seen that over the years. We have definitely seen businesses that look back and say, I really wish we would have thought of that, or I really wish we would have had something in place. Lots of lessons learned after it. We want to get away from that. We want to help you do this right now. Do this before something happens. Think about it now. Put it in place. Again, it was a large lift. We at Reynolds Restoration have put together what we think is a really good interactive planning tool, and we are here to help you with that. We are currently helping our customers with exactly that, putting together a proactive restoration and emergency planning program, better coined as PREP. With that, the first thing that we want to do is we want to do this vulnerability assessment, an important part. We want to meet with the leadership team, facilities team, and any other internal stakeholder that you have. And we want to talk about the vulnerabilities of each of your properties. As a company as a whole, understand what your deliverable is and understand the important parts of your operation and what's critical and what's most critical, and assess the risk to your physical structures. So inside of that, that's the first step that we want to do. That's information gathering. Then the next step that we do is the emergency information. So like I talked about, who inside of your company needs to be contacted? When something happens at one of your buildings, who internally needs to be contacted to know that an emergency is happening, and you had some sort of disaster, large or small, who needs to be contacted? And then who is responsible for externally contacting? So once the person that is seeing the disaster or seeing the loss happen, once they contact that person that's responsible for communicating to the tenants or to building vendors or to people that use that structure, then we can go to the other parts of the plan. And the other part of the plan here that we really find very informative and very detailed is our photographic inventory that we're going to take of your building. And that's what we call data mining. So we are going to come with you to your buildings, and we are going to photographically inventory each of the buildings, floor by floor, sometimes room by room, and depending on how involved in the structure is. We're going to look at the electric, shutoffs, water shutoffs. We can upload blueprints, any sort of evacuation plan that you may have in place. We can upload that, and so it can be digitally accessible. So once we have that, we're going to look at, and you're going to be able to, you could view your buildings on a very easily accessible app that you would be able to click on and view your buildings. If you're having an issue at your buildings, you're going to be able to hit call provider. Don't have to remember any numbers or any contact info. You can just hit call provider. And then with that, this screen would come up, and you'd be able to, one, if you didn't know the exact address that you were at, you could just pin your location. Or And then you can attach any photos or write any descriptions and then just hit submit and call. Very, very easy. Again, when we're trying to increase the speed of the response and the quality of that response. You want to respond with the right team and the right crew with the right equipment. So, and if you're clicking on view properties, once you've done all the data mining, you're gonna be able to view each of your properties. And then if you click on one of those properties, you would view the building report. That would be part of your disaster plan. So this is a building specific report. That in the red, you're going to see some very important information, and we can look at a more detailed view of that. So inside a building report, inside that red area, you're going to look at a staging area. Where should the staging area be? And what should happen? Any lost contact information? Have there been other losses that have happened at the building? Has this loss happened before? Some just general information about the building. Then you come up here and you have maybe a picture of the staging area. If it's in a downtown setting, maybe a little hard to find. Where's that loading dock? You could look at up here. You could look at a street view, or just look at a quick map. Where is that? You want to be able to find that. Your team wants to be able to find the person that's calling. And then here's just an example of an electrical protocol. So much like what I said with our photographic inventory, there's going to be a picture of the actual shutoff. Here's a picture of the outside of the room of what you're looking for. And then any detail of how this would work. You can write any sort of detail or a shutdown procedure, anything in there. We've had some owners use this as a training tool. If they have some turnover on the building side, they have their buildings detailed, and they can use this as a training tool. If you have a security company monitoring your buildings, here's something that they can quickly access to know who, what, when, where, and why. So we really find it beneficial that you take action as quickly as possible. In the first 24 to 36, 36 hours, that you take that action, make those, implement your plan, get the correct team out there to minimize the impact to your business and to your buildings. Get yourself back up and running as quick as possible. And these steps that we've laid out, we are there to help you with those steps. So I know I moved through there. We do have a Q&A function, but I know that we have some questions that are out there. I'm happy to answer any questions, Bob. But I know we had a couple questions come through. Any that we think would be beneficial for the group?
Yes. So the first question that I see is, how easily accessible is the information that gets put into the disaster plan?
Sure. Really good question. So there's two different pieces on that. The first one was when I showed you, when there is an app, so accessible by any smartphone, and you would be able to access any photographs and or data that was put for your specific buildings into there. Also, there is a desktop version where you'd be able to have a dashboard that would have all of your buildings, and you would be able to access all of your building reports right there on any desktop, and you would have your company specific dashboard.
All right, we do have another question.
Bob?
Yep, we do have another question. How long does it take to data mine specific buildings?
Sure, another good question that we get. Depending on your specific buildings and how large they are from a square foot standpoint, or just how involved they are, it will take a few hours per building. We really want to go through there and get detailed. We can put as much in the plan as possible. And we do have clients that once we originally data mine the buildings, and then we put together in the plan, they'll call and say, hey, can we add this? Can we add that? This is great. So yes, we can add more and more We just want to originally get the pertinent information in there as soon as possible.
All right, and I have one more question that was proposed, and that is are there specific costs to the program depending on what we use?
From a standpoint of the disaster plan, no. We are doing this for our clients, and there is no upfront cost or ongoing cost for the plan.
Okay, I do have another question that just popped up. Are we limited to how many employees would be able to access the plan through the app?
No, we are not. It is up to the company who they give access to. They can customize the access right in their dashboard to what employees would have access to what buildings and what part of the plant. So if you want to classify it by geography or by individual building or by state, you can customize it from a security standpoint, who would have access to what part of the plant.
Okay, and we do have another question, and that is, given the current weather, what is your recommendation to building owners concerning roof loads, what they should do to try to remove snow in some way?
So about a couple things on that. Yes, when depending on exactly what type of roof brand you have, and you would definitely want to reduce the load on it, but you also want to free up depending on what kind of drainage system when you have up on the roof, whether it is a spouting system that's on the exterior and or whether they're scuppers, you would want to clear away to make sure that as it melts, and the water is able to leave the roof. So as we have snow and then freeze and then more snow and thaw, you want to make sure that on that roof, you have a way for the water to leave as it melts and slowly melts. If it's not there, it is going to pond, and you're going to have increased roof loads in very specific spots, and that's when you could have a collapse and or a roof failure. But another question that we do get asked is how often do you update your plan? And that is really up to the client. If you have if you're adding buildings or if you have some personnel changes, those are definite times when that you need to update the plan. If you really don't have any of those, you really need to look at it at least once a year. But anytime you have a change in personnel, increase or decrease, and or adding different properties and or buying a business or anything like that, you would definitely want to incorporate that. I really want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, really wish we could be in person, but hope to see everyone in the near future and make sure everybody stays safe out there. Thank you very much.